It's been about 1.5 years, and I think it's time that I tell the story. April 24, 2010. So about a month earlier, I had gone for routine physical, just to get my one in for the year. And I thought everything was fine. I didn't hear anything from the doctors after a couple of weeks, so I assumed everything was good, right? I was back in March, and then in April, a couple of days beforehand, I had gotten a call from my parents that night, and they let me know that the doctor had called and said that after reviewing all my lab results, my platelets in my blood were really low. I didn't know what that meant. After getting all that info, the doctor wanted me to come in and get everything rechecked just to make sure there was nothing wrong with the machine or anything. So that Friday, the Friday before Maryland Day, I go in and get my CBC. CBC is a complete blood count. They test your platelets and your red blood cells and your white blood cells. And they reviewed it that day, and the doctor called my parents, and they called me, and they said that I needed to go to a hospital immediately because my platelets were really low. Okay. All right, yeah, that's interesting. So this information comes up less than a month from me graduating from college. And for me to never have experienced any kind of serious health ailments, never have heard anything like a history in my family about bone marrow disorders or anything like that, and all of a sudden, just out of the blue, completely out of the blue, to hear this news that I have a low platelet count. And I remember this next part vividly. Sitting in that hospital room, laying on that bed, mother with me. Doctor comes in, gives me an update, says, no, not only are your platelets low, but your white blood cells and your red blood cells are also low, which could indicate something like cancer. Wow. I always look at life in a broad spectrum or a big picture scenario. I had a feeling that God's hands were all over this. For you to be kind of living your life, doing your thing, being focused on your own kind of path, and then for everything to be turned upside down. Something that's completely unexpected just flows into your life. And I just couldn't help but think, this is all God, and I'm supposed to be learning some kind of big lesson out of this as soon as I figure out what it is. Yeah. They finally came down to two possibilities. It could either have been leukemia, which is cancer of the bone marrow, or aplastic anemia, which is a little less severe, but it's still some type of bone marrow failure. And finally, after all the results, they told me that it was aplastic anemia. I was in serious danger of having cerebral bleeding at age 21. And you know what? If that would have happened, it would have been lights out for me. It would have been done. Thank God that things worked out overall. That in subsequent weeks I was able to go back to school, and I was able to graduate with the rest of my classmates. I was able to get successful treatment the week after I graduated, and I was able to recover. I've learned a lot about humility in life, and what it is to know that all the different successes that you have in life, your status, your health status, your living condition status, like all that is a blessing from God. All that is given to you by God, and it has nothing to do with you or how hard you worked or the time that you put in. All that stuff is good, but it's only because of God's grace that you have the things in life that you do. If I didn't have a successful alternative treatment, I would have had to undergo a bone marrow transplant. Think about that list, that bone marrow donor list, is that there are small numbers of ethnic minorities on that list to provide transplants. African Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, people who are of mixed persuasion. There are very few of them on that list to provide bone marrow transplants. So when a person like me or any other person who is the ethnic minority deals with a bone marrow failure and doesn't have a sibling to provide them with a bone marrow transplant, their chances of survival decrease rapidly. And being realistic with myself, I know that everybody's going to go on this site and seriously consider being a bone marrow donor. But if I could just get one person to at least contemplate it and think about it, and maybe even move forward with a decision, maybe that's one life that will be saved. That isn't something that you ever seriously thought about, maybe consider being an organ donor. Go on to organdonor.gov and see what kind of commitment that is, and think about doing that for somebody. Maybe you could save up to 8 lives. You never know. The biggest lesson that I've learned in all of this is that in life, sometimes we can get so focused on the bad stuff that happens, the things that really weigh us down. But know that if you're truly a warrior, whatever you want to call it, for Christ, if you're truly a soldier for God, you're out there on the front lines, you're probably going to get attacked the most. You're probably going to go through some difficult things, even more difficult things than you may see your peers going through. But look at your life like a story, and know that the most interesting stories have those pitfalls and those dicey situations in the middle of the story. But at the end, when the character triumphs, it makes for a more interesting read.